Tonight's next story is messier, much messier. It is the story of how women throughout human history have dealt with something remarkably ordinary. Menstruation. From ancient absorbance to medieval superstition, from Victorian denial to 20th century marketing spin. This is a tale of resourcefulness, resilience, and deeply impractical undergarments. So settle in, light a candle, and prepare to explore what history class politely skipped, because tonight we unravel the surprisingly hush-hush history of feminine hygiene. Ancient times. Let the improvisation begin. Our earliest records of menstrual care date back thousands of years. And to be clear, the word care is doing a lot of heavy lifting. In ancient Egypt, women are believed to have used softened papyrus as tampons. Picture it, reedy paper plants, rolled and inserted, not the spa experience you're imagining. In ancient Greece, the philosopher Hippocrates wrote of women using lint wrapped around wood. Yes, wood. We do not recommend it. Roman women reportedly used wool, because nothing says comfort like the same material you'd use for a gladiator's sock. In ancient Japan, women folded paper into pads, changed frequently, and then burned them for sanitary disposal. This practice was called hoshi, which roughly translates to, "Please don't judge me. This is the best option we've got." Meanwhile, in China, women used layers of silk or moss. Moss, while strangely poetic, was also likely full of tiny forest bugs. So, trade-offs. Native American women used buffalo skin or absorbent bark tucked into handmade belts. The materials changed by region. Sea sponges in coastal communities, grass in nomadic tribes, banana leaves in tropical areas. But the ingenuity was universal. No plastic, no cotton applicators, just whatever nature offered, with zero shame and zero packaging. The Middle Ages, a time of silence and suspicion. The Middle Ages, where superstition met sanitation and lost. In medieval Europe, menstruation was treated as something mysterious, dangerous, and not to be discussed in polite company, or impolite company, or any company. There is frustratingly little written about medieval period care, partly because men wrote the history books, and partly because the general attitude was, let's pretend it isn't happening. Women used rags, strips of linen that were washed and reused. These were worn in cloth belts, or tied in place with whatever string or makeshift harness was available. Hence the term on the rag, but not everyone used them. Many women, especially peasants and labourers, simply bled into their clothing. Why? Because laundry was hard, soap was a luxury, and spending hours soaking and scrubbing a rag for something that happened every month. That was a rich woman's burden. Some wore multiple layers, some sat on straw, and some just carried on with their day. Because when your job is milking goats and surviving the plague, a period barely registers. As for beliefs, oh, they were wild. Medieval medical texts described menstrual blood as toxic. It could wilt crops, cure leprosy, turn wine sour, make dogs go mad. Basically, a menstruating woman was one ill-timed sneeze away from being blamed for a famine. The Renaissance to Victorian era, when modesty took the wheel during the Renaissance, not much changed, except the underpants. Women began wearing drawers, which helped hold cloth pads in place. But these were still rags, tied with strings, pinned awkwardly, and swapped out whenever you could find privacy. In the 18th century, medical science began catching up, slowly, but modesty kept it quiet, very quiet. By the Victorian era, menstruation became a source of shame cloaked in silk and denial. Vulgar to speak of, inappropriate to acknowledge. Even advertisements referred to menstrual products as feminine necessities, which could mean pads or gloves, or possibly a fainting couch. Women used sanitary aprons, rubber sheets tied around the waist to protect clothing, not absorbent, just waterproof. Imagine spending a week wrapped in a shower curtain. Reusable pads, now made with cotton, became more common, but were still pinned into corset-like belts that screamed, "This will chafe." And if you think that sounds impractical, yes, it was. But so were most things in the 1800s. The 20th century, modern innovation slowly leaking in. 1896, the first commercial disposable pad was launched by Johnson & Johnson, called Lister's Towels. It flopped, because stores didn't want to display them, women didn't want to ask for them, and men didn't want to sell them. Then came World War I. Nurses discovered that cellulose, a material used for bandages, was more absorbent than cloth. When the war ended, some genius said, why not rebrand battlefield supplies for periods? And so, Kotex was born. Pads were still large, bulky, and came with belts. Yes, belts. Elastic bands around your waist, with loops to hold your pad in place. Stylish? No. Secure? Occasionally. Tampons arrived in the 1930s, thanks to a man named Dr. Earl Haas. His design had a cardboard applicator. His friend's wife tried it, loved it, and history was made. Tampax launched in 1936, and once again, people were scandalized. You put what where? Even into the 1950s, tampon ads had to pretend they were for internal feminine hygiene, because apparently everyone at the ad agency had the maturity of a damp sponge. By the 1980s, pads had adhesive strips. By the 1990s, we had wings. And finally, by the 2000s, we had choice, tampons, pads, cups, discs, liners, period underwear, reusables, biodegradables, subscription boxes, Bluetooth trackers, organic cotton sourced from a goat-blessed field in Norway. You name it. And still, for all the advancement, we whisper. We hide products up our sleeves. We slide them across desks like we're dealing contraband. We call it that time of the month like it's Voldemort. But history tells a different story. Of women adapting, improvising, surviving, and occasionally bleeding on a throne. So tonight, as the fire crackles softly and your eyelids grow heavy, remember, the history of feminine hygiene is not just a tale of pads and tampons. It's a story of resilience, of quiet problem solving, of doing what needs to be done while the world looked away. Sleep well, rest easy, and may your dreams be absorbent. I see you have not had enough. We have endless boring stories for you. The next story will have your knickers in a knot while you imagine wiping in ancient history. Okay, here is one more for you. And everyone who accidentally fell into this channel thinking it was a documentary about Egyptian pyramids. Tonight, we're not diving into the construction of the Sphinx. We're not exploring Napoleon's military campaigns. We're not even talking about the Inquisition, though that would be a surprisingly appropriate segue. No. Tonight's story is softer, much softer. It is the tale of the most humble of inventions, the most unspoken, overlooked, yet universally used item of the modern world. Toilet paper. Yes, toilet paper. Humanity's silent companion, the uncelebrated hero of the bathroom. Thing so commonplace, it disappears into our daily routine without much thought. And yet, when it disappears from store shelves, as we've seen, it causes panic of nearly apocalyptic proportions. But how did it all begin? When did the wiping begin? What was the wiping before the wiping was wiped? Settle in. Let's unravel this slow, surprisingly textured story. Long before the modern comforts of double-ply and lavender-scented rolls, our ancestors had other solutions. Ancient Greeks, for instance, used stones. Not metaphorically. Literal, smooth stones, sometimes called pessoi, to clean up after themselves. They also used ceramic shards of pottery, known as ostraka. Now, this is where history gets just a little bit petty. You see, the Greeks often inscribed the names of enemies, usually political, onto these little shards, which means yes, in some cases, people wiped themselves with their opponent's name. This wasn't just hygiene, it was also personal. Imagine campaigning against someone and losing not just the election, but becoming part of a very unfortunate restroom ritual. And then we reach the Romans, the mighty, marble-loving, toga-draped Romans, masters of engineering, builders of aqueducts, designers of cities, conquerors of much of the known world. And yet, when nature called, even they had to squat and scrub like the rest of us. Let us enter the communal latrine, a marvel of Roman sanitation. Picture a long stone bench, polished smooth by time and use, with keyhole-shaped openings carved into it. Maybe 20, maybe 30 Roman citizens lined up side by side. No privacy, no partitions, just sandals, togas, and small talk about chariot races, while relieving themselves. And what did they use to clean themselves? Ah yes, the tessorium, a sponge attached to the end of a stick. This public toilet sponge was not a single-use item, no. It was shared, passed, dipped in a communal bucket of water, salt, and vinegar. It was not so much a tool of cleanliness as it was a shared experience. And if you were wealthy, you might have your own sponge. But if not, well, communal tools were the norm. In colder regions, people turned to snow, which is creative, refreshing, and slightly alarming. In tropical areas, coconut husks were the go-to. Because what else do you do with a fruit that's hairy, aggressive, and vaguely insulting? Other options included moss, leaves, and in one tragic case, poison ivy. That civilization did not thrive. Meanwhile, in China, where paper was first invented, possibly as early as the 2nd century BCE, someone eventually had the brilliant idea to use it for more than writing. By the 6th century AD, records suggest that members of the imperial court were using large sheets of soft paper for personal hygiene. An edict in 1391 ordered that sheets be produced, specifically for the emperor's bottom, each measuring nearly 2 feet by 3 feet. Because when you're an emperor, you deserve a generous square. Other officials, however, were more conservative. One famously wrote that he refused to wipe with paper that bore quotations from Confucius or the names of sages. Respectful, yet revealing. Over in medieval Europe, things were a little more textured. Paper existed, yes, but it was expensive. People were still using animal skins for books, parchment and vellum. Wiping with paper, that would be like using a first edition Shakespeare to clean your boots. So, the humble peasants innovated. They used straw. They used wool scraps. They used, quite commonly, whatever was free and available. And that often meant the pages of unwanted books. There's a rather poetic account of nobles buying up church books during Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries and using them for bathroom duty. Not exactly the afterlife those books expected. As we reach the Renaissance, paper became more accessible, but still, not widely used for bathroom affairs. There's a curious anecdote from the 18th century. Philip Stanhope, the Earl of Chesterfield, wrote of a man who used pages from the Roman poet Horace, read them in the loo, and then sent them away as sacrifices. Efficiency meets literacy. And in America, during colonial times, the preferred method remained proudly agricultural. The corn cob. No frills, no fragrance, just the bare corn. Cobana, some say they were soft, some say otherwise. But something changed at the dawn of the modern era. Paper became cheaper, manufacturing more efficient. And in 1857, a man named Joseph Gaiety had a revolutionary idea. He sold medicated toilet paper infused with aloe, marketed as a remedy for hemorrhoids. Each sheet bore his name as if to say, "I made this. I stand behind it." Literally. It was sold in single sheets, not rolls. Flat, folded, functional. A strange idea at the time, paying money for something most people could get for free like an old newspaper. And so, many ignored him. But He was the first. And every toilet paper roll since owes something to Mr. Gaiety, the man who dared to commercialize wiping. Now, let us roll forward into the age of marketing. In 1890, an American company called Scott Paper entered the scene. Brothers Clarence and Edward Scott, operating out of Philadelphia, took a bold step. They didn't invent toilet paper. They didn't even manufacture it, not at first. Instead, they bought paper in bulk, quietly, unbranded. Then, they sold it through third parties, hotels, pharmacies, department stores, carefully avoiding any direct association with the unmentionable. Because in Victorian times, the topic of wiping was far too improper for dinner conversation, or any conversation really. The Scots had to market a product no one wanted to talk about. So instead of pushing it directly, they let it appear in fancy hotels, in drugstores, in the homes of the quietly wealthy. No loud slogans, no jingles, just soft, mysterious luxury in roll form. By 1902, the Scots decided it was time. They bought the rights to the brand name Waldorf, a name already trusted by hotels. And slowly, they began to label their own product. The roll was here to stay. Perforated, uniform, dependable. Yet still, they danced around the language. They didn't call it toilet paper. They called it sanitary paper or bathroom tissue. The word toilet, considered impolite, was avoided altogether. Even in marketing, toilet paper was a wallflower. In 1928, the world met a new contender, Charmin, a name inspired by charming, gentle, graceful, non-threatening. The branding was floral, feminine, designed to appeal to homemakers and to gently distance the product from its unpleasant purpose. Charmin didn't show bathrooms. Charmin didn't show backsides. Charmin showed clouds, soft textures, whispering roses. It was toilet paper, but make it pretty. And it worked. In 1935, Northern Tissue entered the game. Their claim: their paper was splinter-free, which begs the sleepy question, before then, was it not? We may never know. But the phrase was memorable enough to become part of the marketing law. Then came World War II. Paper, like everything else, was rationed. Soldiers made do with whatever could be spared. In the field, necessity was everything. Comfort was optional. Back home, ads encouraged civilians to conserve, to be patriotic, even in the powder room. Toilet paper wasn't just soft, it was strong, American, helping families in Freedom's Day, clean. By the 1950s and 60s, the taboo around toilet paper began to soften, ever so gently. Advertising crept into living rooms, and by the 1970s, the product was finally called by its real name, toilet paper. One man would carry that banner for decades, Mr. Whipple, a fictional grocery store manager who appeared in Charmin ads from the 1960s into the early 2000s. His slogan: "Please, don't squeeze the Charmin." By 1978, Mr. Whipple was the third most recognized man in America, behind only Richard Nixon and Billy Graham. Yes, more recognized than the actual president. As time wiped forward, the market expanded. We got quilted sheets, embossed rolls, scented multiply marvels, even hypoallergenic blends for the most delicate of derrieres. Meanwhile, Japan, ever the innovator, said, "Why wipe at all? Enter the bidet toilet, with music, with warmth, with pressure settings that could launch a rocket." Japanese smart toilets don't just clean, they perform. They light up, they talk. Some play bird sounds to mask what mustn't be heard. And yet, in the US, adoption was slow, suspicious, occasionally terrified. Americans had questions. Is it cold? Where does the water come from? Why does it have a remote control? But as time passed, curiosity grew. And after a few brave YouTubers shared their clean, misty experiences, the tide began to shift. Still, many clung to their trusty roles. And then, the world changed. Ah, yes. 20. A year remembered for masks, hand sanitizer, and utter panic over toilet paper. When the pandemic struck, people didn't just rush for canned goods or bottled water. No. They sprinted, elbows flailing, toward the toilet paper aisle. Why? Was there a shortage? Not really. The supply chains were intact. But psychologically, toilet paper represents control. Because when the world is falling apart, we cling to what we can manage. And nothing says prepared for disaster. Like 96 rolls of 2-ply, stacked like a fortress of fragile security in your hall closet. Researchers later confirmed, toilet paper hoarding wasn't about need. It was about certainty. You couldn't control the virus. But you could control the softness of your morning routine. Some hoarded, some mocked, some built towers. One woman went viral for lining her entire living room wall with mega rolls, turning her guest bathroom into what could only be described as a quilted panic room. But eventually, the shelves refilled. And we exhaled, wiped gently, and moved on. Sort of. Because the panic opened the door for a new generation of paper alternatives. Enter bamboo TP. Billed as soft, sustainable and safe for pandas, but not made from pandas, bamboo toilet paper hit the market in eco-friendly boxes. Some even came with poems. Yes, poetic toilet paper. Nothing like contemplating life's mysteries while rhyming with your rear. At the same time, a fringe movement began to rise. The family cloth. Reusable, washable, shared, like a hand towel, but make it medieval. Some loved it, some recoiled in horror. Many quietly nodded, backed away, and never spoke of it again. Bidet attachments gained traction too. Sold out online, trending on TikTok. And slowly, America asked itself, do I still need to wipe, or am I ready to spray? As all this unfolded, Charmin, never one to miss a cultural moment, created the world's largest toilet paper roll. 8 feet high, 9 feet across, over 1 million square feet of paper. It was majestic and deeply unnecessary, a monument to our strange priorities, but also kind of beautiful. Because if there's one thing toilet paper has proven over the centuries, it's that we will always find a way. A way to adapt, to innovate, to wipe, roll, spray, or panic stack our way through uncertainty. So now, as the fire crackles and your eyes begin to close, remember, toilet paper isn't just a household item. It's a symbol, a legacy, a soft perforated thread that ties together centuries of human ingenuity, stubbornness, and, well, cheeks. From Greek pottery to Roman vinegar sponges, from aloe-infused sheets to toilet bears and robot bidets, the journey of toilet paper is the journey of us all. Quiet, consistent, and just a little absurd. So sleep well, dear listener. Wipe your mind clean. Let history flush away your worries. And may your dreams be ultra soft, endlessly gentle, and perfectly quilted. I see you have not had enough. We have endless boring stories for you. Found yourself knee-deep in the history of knickers. Tonight, we're not scaling the pyramids. We're not analysing Caesar's military tactics. We're not even examining the causes of the Black Death. Though, given the hygiene standards we'll be discussing, that's not as far off as you'd think. No. Tonight's tale is softer. Much softer. And significantly more elasticated. It is the chronicle of the most overlooked invention in history, the humble undergarment, a piece of fabric so unassuming it rarely gets a second thought until it's missing. Yes, underwear. From breezy prehistoric breechcloths to bloomers big enough to parachute with, from Victorian corset enhancers to today's tagless wonders, we'll gently tug at the waistband of time, revealing layer after layer of stitched indignity, questionable materials, and the occasional codpiece. Yast. But how did we get here? What did people wear before fruit of the loom? Who first decided to tie goatskin around their pelvis and say, yes, this is better? And why have humans been so weirdly inconsistent about covering their bits? Tuck in. Dim the lights. Adjust your waistband. And let's plunge straight into the sagging folds of underwear's surprisingly revealing past. Part 1. The Ancient Draft. Our journey begins with the loincloth, humanity's original attempt to cover the unmentionables without committing to pants. Ötzi, the Iceman, found frozen in the Alps around 3300 BCE, was discovered wearing a goat leather loincloth. Translation: the man climbed mountains in what essentially amounted to a prehistoric leather diaper, brave, drafty, chafe-tastic. In ancient Egypt, linen was the fabric of choice, light, breathable, and ideal for desert living. Even King Tut was sent to the afterlife with over 100 pairs of linen underpants. Because when facing the unknown void, one does not go commando. Over in India, religious texts mention the kaupanam, the sacred loincloth of yogis, minimalist, breezy, and absolutely not designed with squats in mind. The Greeks, of course, went their own way. Athletes trained in the nude because apparently chafing was a sign of character. Still, they occasionally wrapped themselves in soft cloth for modesty, or warmth, or because the breeze became too philosophical. The Romans, ever practical, introduced the subligaculum, a basic undertoga thong situation made from cloth and bravado. Gladiators wore it, labourers wore it. Occasionally even philosophers, though they preferred robes and denial. In China, ancient underwear came in the form of queue, loose, knee-length undertrousers that tied at the waist. Function met fabric, and modesty was preserved, sort of. And the Japanese fundoshi, a tightly wrapped cotton thong worn by sumo wrestlers and samurai alike, because nothing says honour like risking a public unravelling. Part 2. Medieval to modern madness. You've made it through millennia of minimalism. Now things get itchy. In medieval Europe, underpants were called brays, baggy, linen shorts tied at the waist. Functional, voluminous, capable of storing a week's worth of regret. They were worn under tunics, sometimes with hose. If you were lucky, they were washed. Once. Ever. As for women, they wore chemises, long, loose underdresses. No panties. Just vibes. The idea of wrapping fabric around the female pelvis was considered suspicious. Medical journals even warned it could cause hysteria, which is ironic considering the real cause was probably the corset. And then, the codpiece. Originally a simple flap to bridge the gap between two leg tubes, it evolved into a padded, ornamented, and occasionally storage-capable crotch spotlight. Jewel-encrusted, padded to oblivion, and large enough to require its own carriage, the codpiece screamed, "I have nothing to hide, and too much to prove." Some were even rumored to hold snacks, because nothing spices up a banquet like reaching into your trousers for a fig. Fast forward to the Renaissance. Women finally got drawers, long, split-crotch trousers that let them handle basic bodily functions without removing 17 layers of socially mandated upholstery. Practical, yes. Private, not remotely. The 1700s brought more layers, more ties, and the early whispers of elastic. Still, it was mostly buttons and blind optimism. Then came the Industrial Revolution. Cotton underwear for the masses, long johns for men, union suits with a flap in the back, also known as the dignity trapdoor. Women got fitted drawers, then bloomers, which caused such scandal you'd think they were flashing neon signs. One newspaper declared bloomers were the death of femininity. Meanwhile, women were like, cool, I can now bike without indecent exposure. Part 3. The Briefing Era. The 1900s brought the real revolution, briefs. In 1935, a man named Arthur Nibler received a postcard of a man in a bikini. Inspired, he created the modern brief with a Y front fly. Men everywhere rejoiced. Legs were liberated. Support was finally supported. Women got nylon panties in the 1940s. Breathable, fast-drying, and scientifically engineered to make you adjust them every 11 minutes. The 1950s made undergarments glamorous. Bullet bras pointed toward the future. Girdles squeezed, pinched, and shaped silhouettes with the loving pressure of a vice grip. Underwear was now responsible for both modesty and architecture. By the 60s and 70s, spandex arrived. Things got stretchy, things got groovy, and suddenly, underwear started to disappear. Literally, enter the thong. More suggestion than garment. And in 1982, Calvin Klein broke the world. An ad featuring Mark Wahlberg in boxer briefs made visible waistbands a fashion statement, no longer just something to cover your backside. Your underwear was now your brand. The 90s said, show your waistband, say nothing else. The 2000s said, let's make it invisible. The 2010s said, make it breathable, ethical, recyclable, gender neutral, and have it shipped in a compostable envelope. And now, smart underwear, heated underwear, subscription underwear. You can now pay $30 a month to be mildly disappointed by a box of boxers. So, what have we learned? Underwear has evolved from animal hide slings to ethically sourced bamboo blend bralettes. It has gone from silent guardian to fashion influencer, from background character to leading role. And through it all, from goat hide to gussets, it's done one thing: protected our dignity. Kind of. So tonight, as you lie back in your hopefully clean pair of soft, breathable briefs, remember, the journey to comfort was paved with lace, leather, linen, and lots of laundry-related trauma. Sleep well, dream soft, and may your waistband never betray you. Good night until we meet again, my friends. If this did not put you to sleep, then I don't know what will.